In the spring of 1994, a 9-year-old boy vanished behind his elementary school during recess. The last place he was seen, a wooded patch behind a portable classroom known as Room 3B. The woods were fenced off. The case went cold, but 30 years later, during a school renovation, workers unearthed a sealed brick stairwell behind Room 3B, hidden beneath the roots. And what they found at the bottom will disturb you. If you believe every child deserves to be found, and every secret deserves the truth, subscribe for more real, gripping true crime stories brought to light. March 28th, 2024. Location: Tilden Creek Elementary, Ohio. A construction crew clearing ground for a new STEM building at Tilden Creek Elementary uncovers an anomaly beneath the roots of a long-removed tree behind Room 3B. A brick-lined stairwell, sealed with mortar, is discovered just feet from where a 9-year-old boy named Ryan James vanished 3 decades earlier. The site is shut down. Forensics arrive. What they find inside will reawaken a case the town had buried, literally and figuratively. May 3rd, 1994. Location: Tilden Creek Elementary, Ohio. The last bell rang at exactly 2:47 p.m. It echoed across the playground like it always did, sharp, metallic, and just loud enough to drown out the screeches of children cutting loose. It was the first warm day of May, and the staff at Tilden Creek Elementary had opened all the windows. The scent of honeysuckle drifted in through Room 3B, where chalk dust still hung in the air, and the afternoon sun poured through faded blinds. Recess came late that day. Testing schedules had pushed everything back. Ryan James, age 9, barely noticed. He didn't care much for tests, or math. Our school, really. What he cared about was the woods. "Bet you won't," Eli whispered, grinning, his breath smelling faintly of Cool Ranch Doritos. "You chicken." Ryan looked past him, past the tetherball pole, the row of faded portables, and the narrow dirt path that led into the trees. It wasn't an official trail. No one was supposed to go back there, especially not since the fence had gone up around the back lot last year. But there was still a way in, just behind Room 3B. A dip in the fence, a weak link in the chain. Ryan swallowed hard. "How long?" "5 minutes, Eli said. "Go in, touch the big tree, come back." "What if I get caught?" "By who?" "It's recess. No one's watching. Come on, you scared?" Ryan didn't answer. He was already walking. Behind him, the laughter and screaming of kids bounced off the concrete. The teacher on duty, Coach Bennington, was leaning against the chain-link fence near the ball field, squinting at the sun and nursing his 3rd Diet Pepsi. Nobody was looking this way. Ryan jogged toward the edge of the portables. Room 3A, 3B, then the corner. He paused. The back of the portable classrooms had always made him nervous. Something about the humming AC units and the exposed underside. The way the support beams looked like giant insect legs. The way shadows pooled between the buildings. He stepped behind Room 3B and crouched low. The gap in the fence was still there, mostly hidden by a pile of wet leaves and an old wooden pallet someone had leaned against it. The trees beyond loomed like a wall, dense, green, buzzing with spring. He squeezed through the gap. The woods swallowed him whole. 30 seconds in, the noise of the playground faded like someone turned down the volume on the world. Leaves crunched underfoot. A squirrel darted up a tree. Far above, something flapped its wings. Ryan's heart thudded, not just from nerves, but excitement. The air was cooler here, and it smelled like mud and pine needles. He walked fast, almost jogging. The big tree wasn't hard to find. It had a thick, gnarled base that looked like twisted rope and a long crack running up the trunk. It had been there forever. Ryan touched the bark with his palm. "See?" he whispered to no one. "Easy." Then he turned around to head back. But the trail behind him looked different now. In the schoolyard, the bell rang again at 3:17 p.m., the official end of the school day. Children spilled toward buses. Lines formed. Coaches shouted names. Parents waited with arms crossed. The noise returned. Except Ryan James never came out. By 3:26, his teacher, Miss Braley, realized he hadn't returned for his backpack. By 3:39, the front office had paged him twice. By 3:54, Eli Trask was being questioned in the principal's office, face pale and shoes muddy. I don't know, he stammered. He said he had to pee. You didn't see him after recess? Principal DeMarco asked. Eli shook his head, but he was lying. His nails dug into his palms. By 4:15 p.m., the school was locked down. Local police arrived shortly after. The woods were searched until sunset. Dogs were brought in. Volunteers, helicopters, nothing, no footprints, no torn clothing, no signs of struggle, just a scuffed patch of dirt near the fence and a single red shoelace caught on the wire. Ryan's mother, Catherine, screamed when she saw it. That night, room 3B sat dark and still. The janitor locked it last, turning the key slowly, as if afraid to disturb something. No one noticed the muddy smudge beneath the rear window, or the faint drag marks leading away from the back corner. And no one, not teachers, not parents, not police, ever asked about the buried service panel beneath the portable, the one hidden behind a layer of plywood and gravel, the one that hadn't been opened in years. Or so they thought. 30 years later, the earth would give it back, but not all of it. March 25th, 2024. Location: Tilden Creek, Ohio. The sign still read Tilden Creek Elementary, but the letters were faded, and the blue paint was peeling around the edges like sunburned skin. Hannah Corbin parked at the edge of the cracked lot and shut off the engine. The air smelled like rain and worms, the pavement still wet from the morning storm. Across the playground, she could see the portables, rooms 3A through 3D, still standing, barely changed in 30 years. She half expected to see a line of third graders filing into them, lunch pails swinging, hair frizzed from static. But the yard was empty and quiet. Too quiet for a place that once echoed with laughter and screeching and the rhythmic slap of jump ropes. She stepped out, slinging her audio recorder bag over one shoulder. Her boots sank slightly into the wet gravel. Tilden Creek hadn't changed much. A few new houses, a widened road here and there. But the bones of the town were still the same, rusted, worn, and haunted by things that never got talked about, at least not out loud. Hannah was here to talk about them. 2 months earlier, she'd received a voicemail. "Miss Corbin, this is David Reese from the Tilden Creek School Board. I understand you do podcast work now. We've uncovered something during a renovation at the old elementary campus, and, well, we thought you might want to be informed. You were a student here in '94, right?" Her heart had skipped when she heard the date. She hadn't heard that year spoken out loud in a long time. He hadn't said the name. No one ever did. Ryan James. She'd been 8 years old when it happened. Her twin brother Lucas had been in room 3B that spring. Hannah had been one classroom over, in 3A. They weren't in the same room, but they met at recess, sat together at lunch, walked home with the same plastic lunchboxes clanking against their knees. Ryan had been Lucas's friend. Not best friends, but close enough for playdates, close enough for sleepovers, close enough for Lucas to cry for weeks after he vanished. And then he stopped crying. Their parents told her not to bring it up anymore. "It's too hard for him," their mother had said. "He's having trouble sleeping." Years later, when she'd asked Lucas about it, he only shrugged. "I don't remember much," he said. "Just that he was there, and then he wasn't." But Hannah remembered. She remembered the lockdown, the way everyone was kept inside while teachers whispered near the windows. She remembered the look on Miss Braley's face, how her hands trembled when the police showed up. She remembered the way room 3B smelled when she peeked through the cracked door after hours, like chalk, old socks, and something else. Something sour. Lucas had shut it out, but Hannah hadn't. That day became a splinter in her memory. It festered. Maybe that's why she started the podcast, Echoes from the Fence Line. Stories about kids who went missing in plain sight. Rural disappearances, small-town myths. She dug into stories no one wanted to revisit, but she never touched Ryan's. Until now. She followed the yellow construction tape around the side of the building. A backhoe sat parked beside a churned-up patch of earth. Plywood walls cordoned off the area where the portables used to meet the tree line. That tree line was thinner now. Years of trimming and development had stripped away the dense wall of forest. But the bones were still there, just like the school. And behind room 3B, where the woods once swallowed a boy whole, a deep hole had been dug into the ground. 2 men in hard hats stood beside it, talking in low voices. One of them turned. "You Hannah?" She nodded. "Yeah, from the podcast." The man stepped forward, extending a gloved hand. "Mitch Barlow, site lead. You're the one they called in." "More like, I volunteered." He gave a grunt that might have been amusement or discomfort. It was hard to tell. "Come on, you'll want to see this." He led her toward the pit. The closer she got, the colder the air seemed to become. It wasn't just the wind. Something about the spot felt wrong, like the ground itself didn't want to be touched. Barlow gestured downward. At first, she didn't see it. Then the light shifted. Bricks, a stairwell, narrow, damp, leading into darkness. The stairs were framed by old tree roots, gnarled and bone-white, wrapped around the brick like fingers. Mortar had sealed the top until just last week, when a machine operator cracked it while tearing up the foundation. "They thought it was an old septic chamber," Barlow said. "But it's got steps. Stone, narrow, hand-laid. Looks like someone went to a lot of trouble to hide it." She swallowed. "What's down there?" Barlow hesitated. "We sent in a crew. They found remains. Human?" He nodded. "One set, definitely a child. The other 2, older, male and female. One of them was wearing janitor keys. Old ones." The hairs on Hannah's arms rose. "Is the stairwell connected to room 3B? "That's what we're trying to figure out," he said. "It's weird. The foundation blueprint from '78 doesn't show any subterranean access back here, but somebody dug it out. Somebody poured it. Somebody bricked it up." "Have police been called?" "They're here now. Forensics team came yesterday. They shut us down until further notice, but Reese said you were good to come by." Hannah stepped closer to the edge, her recorder humming in her pocket. At the base of the stairwell, in the shadows, she could just make out something pale lying against the wall. It could have been a bone or a shoe. Her throat tightened. "Where's the access panel?" she asked. Barlow blinked. "Access?" "The back panel on room 3B. There was a crawl space back there. My brother remembers it. Said the janitor used to go under there during rainstorms." Barlow looked uneasy. "Far as we know, that panel was covered in gravel, and there's no record of a crawl space." "There wouldn't be." He stared at her. She stared back. Later that afternoon, Hannah sat in her rented motel room, the voice recorder balanced on her lap, her laptop screen showing a blurred satellite map of Tilden Creek. She hit record. Episode 1. The Stairwell. This isn't just about a missing child. This is about what we bury, about what we build over the places we don't want to look. In 1994, Ryan James vanished behind a school building. In 2024, we found the stairs. We found the bones, but what we haven't found is the whole truth. She sat back in the silence, heart pounding. The town hadn't forgotten. It had just refused to remember. March 26th, 2024. Location, Tilden Creek Elementary. Excavation site. The air near the stairwell had a smell to it now, something ancient and wrong. Not just the rot of disturbed earth, not just the wet wood and rusted nails unearthed by backhoes. It was denser than that. A sour, cellar rot that clung to the back of your throat and lingered in your nose long after you left. Detective Noah Greer crouched at the mouth of the newly revealed brick stairwell. Gloved hand braced against a root that had grown sideways into the wall. Pink survey flags marked where tree roots had been sliced through. Shattered brick and loose soil piled around the edge of the opening. At the bottom of the stairs, 10 steps down, the crime scene unit had erected a makeshift light stand and cordoned off a small radius with yellow nylon rope. The bones were already gone, bagged and tagged and sent off to the state lab in Columbus. But the imprint of the scene remained. The shallow drag marks, the flattened fabric, the 2 rusted key rings laid side by side in the dirt. Greer stood. Sealed from above, he muttered, half to himself. No natural collapse. This was deliberate. Sealed tight, CSU Tech Kevin Dawson confirmed, scanning his clipboard. Mortared shut, from the outside, not the inside. So whoever was down there, if they were alive, was trapped. Dawson gave a single grim nod. Or left. Greer turned slowly, eyeing the base of room 3B. The support beams had shifted slightly with the excavation, revealing the underside of the portable classroom. A crawl space, maybe 4 feet high, stretched into shadow behind torn insulation. And right in the middle of that shadow was a hinged panel, fresh scrape marks on the floor. Up above, Hannah Corbin watched from behind the caution tape, phone raised, snapping stills of the scene while trying to keep her breath even. She'd seen dead things before, interviewed families, visited old crime scenes, watched court footage that showed far worse than this. But there was something about seeing it in her own hometown, in her own childhood school. That unsettled her in a way no case ever had. The stairwell was smaller than she expected, crude, handmade. The bricks didn't match the school's foundation, and the tree root that curled down over it like a dead arm. That was new. 30 years ago, there had been no tree this large behind room 3B. The forest hadn't reached that close, which meant someone had built it after the portable was installed, quietly, illegally. She flipped through her notebook. Portable classrooms added 1989. Ryan James vanished. May 3rd, 1994. Portable 3B disconnected. 2001. Never replaced, never repurposed, just left to rot. She looked down again. A technician was now prying open the crawlspace hatch under room 3B. A metal clang echoed out from underneath, followed by a long pause and then a faint, "Jesus Christ." One of the officers waved Greer over. They'd found something. Inside the crawlspace, floodlights illuminated dust and fiberglass and forgotten decades. A narrow channel ran under the classroom, about 4 feet wide, maybe 30 feet long. It had once housed pipes and wiring, but now it held something else, something that shouldn't have been there. A wooden door, reinforced with bolts and painted a faded pink, sat flush against the back foundation wall. Greer ducked to examine it. The handle had been removed. In its place, a rusted iron loop bolted through the wood. For a padlock. He turned to the nearest officer. "Get bolt cutters and gloves, we're opening it." By the time they pried it open, Hannah had been granted limited access, enough to witness the moment the door gave way. The smell hit first. Not death, not quite. Something more sterile, like ammonia, bleach, and something chemical underneath that made your eyes water. The door opened into a short descending shaft, maybe 6 feet long, 2 feet wide. Plywood walls, rubber mats on the floor. Crude steps descending into what looked like an extension beneath the building. The air inside was thick and still. Detective Greer led the way with a flashlight. The space opened into a box-shaped concrete room barely 6 feet across. At the center was a folding cot. Next to it, a plastic crate filled with snack wrappers and juice boxes so old the labels had faded. And pinned to the wall with tacks were drawings, hundreds of them, childlike, crayon, marker, pencil, stick figures and houses, trees. The classroom, a girl with black hair, a boy with red shoes, and a name written again and again. Ryan, Ryan, Ryan. Some were scrawled in shaky lines, others neat and careful, but they all ended the same way. Blacked out eyes, no faces, just X's. Is this where he was kept? Hannah whispered. Greer didn't answer right away. He was staring at one of the drawings, squinting at the corner. What is it? She asked. He tapped the paper. A signature. Not Ryan's. For the keeper. That night, Hannah uploaded a special mini-episode to her podcast. We now have confirmation that Ryan James was not just abducted. He was kept, hidden, steps away from his own classroom. The stairwell wasn't the only secret. There was a room, below room 3B, with food, bedding, crayon drawings, and a name that appears repeatedly across the walls. The Keeper. Was it the abductor, a second figure, or something worse? We don't know yet, but the drawings say it all. She sat back, the weight of it pressing in. The boy hadn't been taken far. He'd been right there, underneath them. March 27th, 2024. Location, Tilden Creek Police Department, Forensics Division. The report came in just after 10 a.m. 2 full days after the discovery. 2 sleepless nights for Detective Noah Greer, and 1 shattered community trying to comprehend what had festered beneath their school for 30 years. Subject A. Confirmed. Ryan James. Age 9. Positive match via dental records and mitochondrial DNA. Cause of death, undetermined due to partial skeletal decomposition. Subject B. Male, 40s. Partial ID from keyring and work-issued dental record fragment. Carl Dallin. Tilden Creek Elementary's former custodian. Last seen, May 1994. Officially listed as presumed suicide after disappearing a week following Ryan's abduction. Subject C, female mid-50s, unknown, no ID yet, but signs point to an older woman with long-term bone thinning, possible arthritis, and signs of healed fractures in the right arm and clavicle. 3 bodies, 1 sealed tomb, no answers, only rot. Greer stared at the files for a long time. Carl Dallin. He remembered the man. Everyone in town did. Tall, quiet. Wore the same red windbreaker even in the summer. Always carried a ring of old keys clipped to his belt. Kids used to say he lived at the school, that he slept in the boiler room. The adults had laughed it off. But Greer remembered something else too. He remembered how fast the rumors died after Carl vanished. How quickly the principal shut it down. No school-wide memorial. No investigation beyond a few days of weak questioning. Just a quick official statement. Carl Dallin was a troubled man. We believe he took his own life. Please keep his family in your prayers. Greer had been 20 back then, studying criminal justice. He remembered thinking it sounded wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. And now here Carl was, decades later, sealed beneath room 3B with the bones of a child and a woman no one wanted to name. Hannah Corbin was already outside the station when Greer stepped out for air. She wore a faded army jacket, recorder in one hand, coffee in the other. I heard, she said. Ryan, confirmed. Greer nodded. Yeah, and Dallin. He was down there too. She let out a long breath. So he's the guy then? Maybe, Greer said. Or maybe he was just another victim. What makes you say that? He handed her a copy of the autopsy snapshot. Carl Dallin's wrist bones showed signs of restraint. Ligature marks, healed fractures in the fingers. One of his ankles had been shattered, possibly from an old fall. Not suicide, Greer said. Not by a long shot. Later that afternoon, Hannah sat cross-legged on the floor of the Tilden Creek Historical Library. Yearbooks and personnel records spread around her like a crime scene of their own. She flipped through the 1992 staff photo page. Teachers, aides, coaches, janitorial crew. There he was, Carl Dalen, maintenance, eyes unfocused, lean build, wearing the red windbreaker. A handwritten note beneath the page read, Dalen, Carl, hired 1986. No college record on file, cleared background. Nothing about the woman. She moved to the next yearbook. And that's when she saw it. A woman she didn't recognize. Irma Gates, listed as Support Educator, Portable 3B. No photo, just a name and title. She flipped to the following year. Gone. No resignation listed, no transfer, no mention of her at all. By sunset, Hannah was standing outside the cracked stucco house at the far end of Maple Run Lane. The mailbox still had the name Gates in peeling vinyl letters. The door was answered by a man in his 60s, hair gray at the temples and suspicion in his eyes. "Can I help you? Are you related to Irma Gates?" she asked gently. His face changed. Something closed behind his eyes. "She was my sister." Hannah hesitated. "I believe her remains may have been found behind Tilden Creek Elementary." A long pause. "She died in 1995. At least that's what they told us. No body?" Number she just vanished. He stepped back. "You better come in." The living room was quiet, stale, like no one had opened the windows in years. "She lived alone," her brother said. "Didn't have family of her own. Never liked talking about her work. Said the school was a bad place. She tried to quit twice, but the principal, DeMarco, convinced her to stay on." Hannah leaned forward. Did she ever mention a student named Ryan James? But she mentioned the janitor. Said he gave her the creeps. "Carl Dalen." The man nodded slowly. "She said he kept asking to borrow the kids for side projects. Said he had special plans for one of the boys. She reported him to the board." Hannah froze. "Wait, she reported him?" "Twice. They told her she was being paranoid. DeMarco had her moved out of room 3B. Next week she vanished." He opened a drawer and pulled out a copy of the letter she'd mailed him a month before her disappearance. "There's something wrong with that classroom. I'm not crazy, Ray. I think they're hiding something in the walls. Dalen is involved. I just don't know how deep it goes." That night, back at the motel, Hannah sat staring at the evidence on her bed. 3 names, 3 bodies, and a trail of warnings no one listened to. She hit record. Episode 2, Names They Never Said: Ryan James, Carl Dalen, Irma Gates. Each disappeared in May of 1994. Each presumed dead, but only one was investigated. Irma warned them. She tried. She told her brother something was happening in room 3B, and no one listened. And now they've all been found in the same grave. March 28, 2024. Location: Tilden Creek School District Records Office. The records room smelled like dust, toner, and denial. Hannah stood under a flickering fluorescent light, watching the district clerk, an underpaid temp named Melissa, dig through a gray filing cabinet that looked like it hadn't been touched since Clinton was in office. "You sure you want all of this?" Melissa asked, sliding open a second drawer. "These boxes go back to the late 80s. Nobody ever pulls this stuff." "That's the idea," Hannah said, pulling her recorder from her pocket and quietly switching it on. "I'm looking for documentation tied to room 3B, incident reports, maintenance logs, staffing records, anything between 1989 and 1996. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Why that room?" "You saw the news." "Right, the stairwell thing." She paused. "I was in 3rd grade when it happened. Ryan James. I don't remember him, but my sister swore she saw something weird that day. Said the janitor had been crying in the parking lot before they found the shoelace." Melissa handed over 2 cardboard file boxes. "Start with these. Just let me know if you find mold or dead bugs. I'm not paid enough to fight mildew." An hour later, Hannah sat cross-legged on the floor between two towers of yellowed files, reading by phone light. Most of it was mundane. Substitute schedules, utility bills, cafeteria audits. But buried in the third folder of Box 2, she found what she didn't know she was looking for. Incident Report Number 94-113 filed, April 29, 1994. Location: Portable Classroom. 3B, submitted by Irma Gates. Summary: recurrent incidents involving student anxiety, bedwetting, refusal to enter room 3B. One child reports hearing noises through the floor during quiet time. Requests site evaluation. Evaluation not warranted. Principal's comment: staff advised to monitor students and avoid overreaction. No structural issues observed. She flipped to the next sheet. Maintenance request. April 15, 1994. Requested by Carl Dahlen. Purpose: subfloor inspection, ventilation duct rerouting. Materials ordered: 12 concrete pavers, 6 bags mortar, 10 cinder blocks, 4 gallons waterproofing sealant. Approved and signed by Principal DeMarco. No follow-up. Next came a red folder marked Confidential. Do not file in handwritten Sharpie across the top. Inside, a single-page memo dated May 9, 1994, 6 days after Ryan vanished. 2. Board of Education, Tilden Creek School District. Subject: Room 3B, voluntary closure request. Given the recent trauma experienced by staff and students and the increasing behavioral disruptions tied to Portable 3B, I recommend its closure for the remainder of the academic year. A temporary solution will be implemented to redistribute students and reassign educators. Further investigation not recommended. Respectfully, Principal Anthony DeMarco. Hannah stared at the signature. Further investigation not recommended. She took photos of everything. Then she packed up and left. Fast. The sun was already going down by the time she stepped into her rental car, and the old school loomed in the rear view like a relic. She gripped the wheel tighter. It wasn't just neglect. It was deliberate. Room 3B had a paper trail of warnings, children reporting sounds, teachers filing complaints, a janitor making unauthorized construction modifications beneath the floor. And no one had done a damn thing. Back at the motel, she uploaded the next podcast segment, Episode 3. The classroom files before Ryan vanished. Children were crying, complaining, wetting their pants. They said something was under the floor. A teacher tried to report it. The janitor started building without permits. The principal signed it all off and then shut it down. Room 3B wasn't just a classroom. It was a funnel, a trap. And somebody knew it. She paused the recording, then opened the last document she hadn't dared touch yet. Guidance Office Staff Log, 1993 to 1994. Name: Ms. Caroline Brooks. Title: Child Psychologist / Behavioral Specialist Assigned Classroom. Oversight: Room 3B, Room 2. See status: terminated, May 4, 1994. 1 day after Ryan vanished. Termination. Reason: voluntary resignation. No forwarding address. Final paycheck: uncollected. That night she dreamt of the portable classroom again. The pink door. The crayon drawings. A face in the floor vent whispering a name she hadn't heard since childhood. Ryan. March 29, 2024. Location: Tilden Creek. Public Works Archives. Basement level. It started with a name stamped in faded blue ink at the bottom of a yellowed blueprint. Contractor: R. Heller Construction Services. Date: August 12, 1993. Project description: subfloor vent rerouting. Portable units 3A through 3D notes. Adjusted specs at request of site custodian. Secondary drainage chamber added per safety code request. Line item: lower room, poured concrete slab, double insulated panel. Hannah's finger traced the words again. Lower room, not classroom, not utility space. Just that vague, deliberately euphemistic term, lower room, tucked into the margin like a footnote someone hoped wouldn't be read. She was sitting on the floor of the Tilden Creek Public Works basement, the smell of old paper and mildew thick around her. Dozens of dusty tubes of blueprints leaned in metal bins against the wall. A flickering desk lamp cast the only light. Her laptop battery was dying. Her back ached, but she was getting closer. There had been more than just a trap door, more than a stairwell. Someone had designed this. Someone had built it. She jotted the contractor's name in her notebook, folded the copy of the blueprint, and headed back upstairs. At the front desk, she asked the clerk for records tied to R. Heller Construction, permits, contracts, or anything filed between 1990 and 1995. The clerk, a college student in a hoodie, tapped at his keyboard, squinted at the screen, and finally said, "Looks like he retired, moved to Mount Sterling, left a forwarding number, though." He handed her a sticky note. A landline. 2 hours later, she was parked outside a small one-story home with overgrown hedges and a rusting pickup in the driveway. The mailbox read, Heller. A carved wooden sign below said, "Retired, not taking new jobs, but the coffee's hot." Hannah smiled, despite the weight in her chest. She knocked. The door opened a moment later. Raymond Heller was in his 80s, wiry, with sun-spotted arms and eyes that had seen more than they said. "You the one asking about the old school job?" he asked. "I am," she said. "Room 3B. His smile faded. "Come in." The inside of the house smelled like pipe tobacco and pine cleaner. Walls lined with faded photographs, family, job sites, military service medals. A cuckoo clock ticked faintly in the corner. "You a cop?" Heller asked as they sat. "No," Hannah said. "Podcaster, investigator. I went to Tilden Creek. Ryan James was in my brother's class." "God," Heller muttered. "I always wondered if he'd been found." She let the silence sit for a beat. "Mr. Heller, did you build a room under room 3B? He nodded slowly. "Yeah, not at first, though. That came later. Started as a vent reroute project. Drainage issues. But then, the janitor, Carl, came to me with a private request." "What kind of request?" Heller cleared his throat. "Said he needed an extra space. Storage, he called it, for equipment. Asked if I could carve out a chamber beneath the foundation. Nothing fancy, just reinforced concrete, minimal wiring. Said the principal had approved it off the books." "DeMarco?" "Yep. I asked for permits. He said I'd be paid cash for the extra labor. No permits, just trust." Heller shook his head. "Biggest mistake I ever made." "Why?" Heller opened a drawer and pulled out a thick, weathered ledger. Pages full of invoices, handwritten logs, notes in the margins. He flipped to August 1993. Installed slab, reinforced lower room frame, added acoustic insulation by request, soundproofing panels placed along east wall. "Soundproofing?" Hannah whispered. Heller's mouth tightened. I asked why. He said, "Kids get noisy." That was all he said. I didn't like it, but I took the money. He flipped the page again. September 7th. Returned to install additional bolt lock on interior side. Replaced cot support panel. Rewired lighting to toggle from external breaker. Hannah's voice was barely audible. "There was a cot." "There was a lot I shouldn't have seen," Heller said. "But when I asked, they always said it was for storage or emergencies. Once he said it was for kids who needed quiet time. That one chilled me." She took photos of the ledger. Asked if he'd ever told police. He nodded. "Twice. First time they said it was out of their jurisdiction. Second time, I got a warning. Code enforcement stopped by. Told me to keep my nose in legit jobs." "Who warned you?" "Same guy who paid me." DeMarco Hannah left the house shaken, holding the weight of 30 years' worth of silent guilt in her hands. At the motel that night, she recorded the next podcast segment. Episode 4, The Crawlspace Ledger. In 1993, a contractor was paid off the books to build a hidden room beneath Portable 3B. It had concrete walls, soundproof insulation, a locking door, a cot. He was told it was storage. He was told it was for kids who needed quiet. But what it became was something else entirely. And it was built just months before Ryan James vanished. March 30th, 2024. Location: Tilden Creek. Police Department evidence storage. The photograph was sharper than Hannah expected. Printed on glossy 8x10, under flat overhead light. It showed the base of the brick stairwell behind room 3B. Dirt compacted with age, disturbed by shovels, crime scene boots, and time. And sitting in the corner of the frame, untouched by rot or grime, were a pair of small red sneakers. Size 2Y Velcro straps, white soles, brand faded but unmistakable. "Those the ones?" asked Detective Greer, standing beside her. Hannah didn't answer right away. Her fingers hovered over the print, not touching, just staring. They were clean, not just free of blood or dirt, but pristine, as if they'd been placed there deliberately, as if someone had set them out like a display. Greer exhaled. "We're running soil tests on the treads, but so far, no trace of the surrounding dirt, not a grain. They weren't worn down there." "They were stored," Hannah said softly. He nodded. "Exactly. Preserved. Probably wrapped. Probably hidden. Until recently." She looked up. "You think the killer staged them?" "I think someone wanted them to be seen now, 30 years later." The police had taken the shoes to evidence lockup. The room was climate-controlled and dimly lit, filled with rolling shelves of labeled boxes, bags, and sealed containers. Greer slid open one bin and carefully lifted a clear case from inside. Inside the case, the red shoes. "Ryan's mom identified them immediately," he said. "Said she bought them the week before he vanished. Paid extra for the matching backpack." Hannah leaned in. They were child-sized, narrow. One of the soles had a tiny lightning bolt logo where the heel met the arch, a style that had been discontinued in 1995. "How do you explain this?" she asked. "They look brand new." Greer didn't blink. "Formaldehyde vapor, or something like it. Could have been preserved in airtight packaging. We're running chemical tests now. But why keep them?" He set the case down gently. "Trophies, or relics, or maybe something worse." Later, Hannah sat in her motel room, staring at the photo she'd taken of the shoes. Her laptop lay open beside her, playing a digitized version of a 1993 school safety video she'd ripped from the archives. In the corner of the video, filmed during a campus evacuation drill, she saw Ryan, 9 years old, messy brown hair, laughing as he followed the line of kids in front of the room 3B. Wearing those shoes. She paused the frame, zoomed in. There they were, same color, same lightning bolt. One of the Velcro flaps slightly curled up on the right foot. They were his. And yet, the police said the shoes were placed outside the sealed room, near the bottom of the stairs, not inside the lower room, not near the body, almost like someone had returned them. She hit record. Episode 5, The Boy with Red Shoes. A child vanished in 1994 wearing bright red sneakers. They were never found, until now, pristine, untouched, preserved, as if someone had cared for them all this time, or worshipped them. And here's what's worse. Ryan's shoes weren't found with him. They were left at the bottom of the stairwell, outside the sealed chamber. Which raises the question, was Ryan ever supposed to leave the room? Or did someone else open the door before he died? That night, a message pinged in her inbox. Subject line, "I know what the red shoes mean." Sender, Jamie Clyde. The name stopped her cold. Jamie had been a 4th grader in 1994. Quiet, awkward, always on the edge of every playground game. Hannah hadn't seen him in decades. His message was short. "We all saw the shoes back then, but none of us said a thing. I did. I told the counselor. She told me I was dreaming, but I saw someone put them behind the portable that morning. Not Ryan. Someone bigger. I'm ready to talk. March 31st, 2024. Location: West Edge Apartments, West Tilden Creek. Jamie Clyde answered the door with shaking hands and eyes that wouldn't quite meet hers. The apartment was small, half-empty liquor bottles on the counter, a dusty fish tank with no fish, and a humming TV that hadn't been muted. He looked older than 38, worn down. Skin pale, fingernails chewed raw. But when he saw Hannah, something flickered behind his expression. Recognition, maybe, or shame. "You're Corbin's sister," he said. "That's right," Hannah replied. "Hannah, I was in 3A. Jamie nodded like he already knew. Lucas was in 3B. Everyone remembers Lucas. She stepped inside. "You said you saw something, back then." He shut the door behind her, locked it. "I've never told anyone the real version," he said. "Only what I was supposed to say." "Supposed to?" she echoed. He sat down on the edge of a recliner, hands clasped like he was praying. "The morning Ryan disappeared, I was in the nurse's office. I had stomach problems back then. They let me lay down for 30 minutes after breakfast." Hannah hit record. "What time was this?" Jamie didn't flinch. 8:45 to 9:10 a.m. I remember because the nurse always listened to the same radio station. They played Kiss from a Rose that day. First time I ever heard it." He looked at her, dead serious. "While I was lying there, I saw through the open blinds. You could see part of the field and the back of the portables." She leaned forward. "What did you see?" Jamie's voice dropped. "Someone dragging a boy by the arms, limpio, like a doll, behind room 3B. Her skin went cold. "You're sure it was a child?" He nodded. "It was Ryan, I'm sure. I saw the shoes, the red ones. One fell off, then the person picked it up and stuffed it in a pocket." "Who was dragging him?" Jamie swallowed. "It wasn't the janitor. It wasn't Carl." "Then who?" Jamie blinked. His throat tightened. "I think it was Miss Brooks." Silence. Hannah stared at him. "The guidance counselor?" "She used to come into our class every Thursday," Jamie said. "Sometimes Tuesdays. Sat in the back and wrote things in a black notebook. She was strange, cold, like she didn't know how to smile unless someone told her how." "Are you sure it was her?" Jamie looked haunted. "I saw her face, and the next day she was gone. They told us she transferred, but no one ever said where." That night, Hannah searched her archives. She found a yearbook photo. Caroline Brooks, guidance counselor, 1992 to 1994. Sharp features, chin-length brown hair, thin lips drawn in a practiced smile, cold, intelligent eyes. According to the personnel files, she'd resigned the day after Ryan vanished. Left no forwarding address, never claimed her final check. Gone. Like smoke. She checked every state licensure board from the tri-state area. Nothing current under that name. Then she tried something else. Caroline A. Brooks, alias Search. One match. Brooke C. Ames, social worker license revoked in 2008, Chicago, Illinois. Reason: misconduct involving minors. She stared at the photo. It was her. Later that night, Hannah hit record again. Episode 6. The Witness Who Lied. His name was Jamie Clyde. He watched from the nurse's office window. Saw someone drag a limp child behind the portable classrooms at Tilden Creek Elementary. Not the janitor. Not a stranger. The school's guidance counselor, Caroline Brooks, who quit the day after Ryan vanished, who left no forwarding address, who now appears under a different name in a disciplinary report for misconduct involving children, which means Carl Dalen may not have acted alone. April 1st, 2024. Location: Tilden Creek Police Department. Digital Evidence Lab. The safe was small, dusty, wedged into the back corner of the crawlspace wall behind a room 3B, hidden behind a sheet of insulation and an old HVAC panel. The contractor who found it called it a rusted toolbox. But when the crime scene team pried it open, the smell told them otherwise. Film, plastic, Moldavian, and something older. Inside, tightly packed in 2 neat rows, were 42 VHS tapes, all unmarked except for handwritten codes in black marker. No labels, no years, no titles, just strange pairings like RJ94CB93, LM92, PR01V1, PR01V19. Some had mold spots on the corners. Others had been wrapped in wax paper. One had a cracked case, the tape inside warped and curled like it had been exposed to heat. Detective Greer called in a digital forensic team. 2 days later, the tapes were processed. And on April 1st, 30 years to the day after the first lower room construction log, the first tape was played in a secure evidence room under observation. Hannah sat behind the one-way glass with Detective Greer. A mounted TV glowed in the center of the interrogation room. The room was cold, sterile. A police tech inserted the first tape, RJ94. RJ? Hannah said softly. Ryan James. Greer nodded. We're assuming. The tape clicked. Static. White noise. The tracking bar scrolled. Then the screen snapped into focus. A child's bedroom came into view. Familiar, because it wasn't a child's room at all. It was the lower room. Pink walls, cheap mattress, toys scattered in symmetrical piles. A tripod sat near the corner. The camera was mounted and still, positioned to face the bed directly. And there he was. Ryan James. He looked smaller than Hannah remembered. Wiry frame, red pajamas. He sat on the mattress, clutching a stuffed dog. Say hello, a voice coaxed off camera. Ryan looked unsure. Hi. Louder. Hi. Good. Tell me what day it is. Thursday. What did we do today? Ryan hesitated. We had quiet time. The voice was male, calm. Carl Dalen, almost certain, but flat, like reading from a script. The camera kept rolling, 10 minutes of questions, then music, then Ryan lying down on the mattress. The light dimmed, the screen went black. Hannah gripped the armrest of her chair. That was just the start, Greer muttered. That was the mild tape. She turned. How many did you review? 8, 2 of them unplayable. 4 involved Ryan. The rest, different kids. She sat up straight. Different kids? Greer didn't blink. Not all from Tilden Creek either. Some names don't match school records, but we're cross-checking. We found one labeled CB93, might be Caroline Brooks, or a victim connected to her. We don't know yet. And the PR series? His voice dropped. Those were the worst. Later, in the audio booth at her motel, Hannah sat in silence for several minutes before finally pressing record. Episode 7. The tapes, 42 tapes. Each hidden beneath the school. Each labeled in code. The first shows Ryan James in what looks like a child's bedroom, but it isn't. It's the lower room. He's being coached, taught to perform normalcy, taught to obey, taught to lie, and there are more. Other children, other dates. Some of them we don't have names for, some of them may never be found. But what we do know is this. It wasn't just Carl, and it didn't stop with Ryan. She sat back, heart pounding, eyes stinging. The lower room wasn't an accident. It was a program. April 2nd, 2024. Location, excavation site. Tilden Creek Elementary. Room 3B perimeter. It was the hollow sound that gave it away. When the forensic crew tapped along the southern wall of the stairwell leading into the lower room, one section rang different, deadened, like something was behind it. 3 hours later, they had cleared the bricks. Behind the false wall was a second stairwell, narrower, descending into solid concrete, except it wasn't solid. It was layered, poured in 2 separate stages, and beneath that, another chamber, deeper, wider, older. By noon, The lead excavation team had cleared enough to allow entry. Hannah watched from behind the police line as floodlights lit up the void. What emerged looked less like a basement and more like a bunker. 7 feet deep, poured concrete walls, no drywall, no vents. But what chilled her was what was there. A wooden desk, warped from moisture, 3 black notebooks, sealed in a freezer bag. A child-sized chair bolted to the floor, and a wall, rough, unpainted, carved with names. Some were first names, others initials, a few complete. RJ, CB, Lauren. Tanya, 92. Victoria, didn't finish. Lucas, crossed. PR01. That last one was etched deep. Detective Greer stood beside her at the edge of the dig. They wanted it buried, he said. They double-poured the slab, laid a fake floor on top. Someone knew this had to stay sealed. Until the school started settling, Hannah murmured. The cracked tiles, the shifting grout. It was the second chamber pushing upward. He nodded grimly. Foundation wasn't stable, not in any sense. Inside the notebooks, diagrams, lesson plans, psych profiles, all handwritten, neat, almost clinical. Notebook 1 opened with a title, Project Room 01, Cognitive Behavioral Conditioning Supervising Educator, C. Brooks. Advised by A. Di Marco, Observing Administrator. Hannah sat down on the concrete, gloves on, flipping page by page. Each journal was worse than the last. Entries detailed a structured experiment in child behavior modification, isolating variables like sound deprivation, forced compliance, incentive response. One entry read, Subject RJ has demonstrated sustained obedience after 3 isolated sessions. Progress evident in scripted recall and facial neutralization. Crying episodes reduced with light deprivation and cot restriction. Another. Subject L. Ref. Lucas C. Displayed resistance. Required 2 times duration. Session terminated due to disruption. Returned to classroom. Returned. Hannah's stomach turned. That meant some children came back. Greer looked pale. They weren't just hiding a predator. They were running a black site in a public school, Hannah whispered. And one of the notebooks has diagrams, he added. Designs for similar rooms, portable 2C, 4B, maybe others. She flipped to the last page of the 3rd notebook. There, under a list of names, was a note scrawled in rushed handwriting. PR02 scheduled fall 1995. Approval pending funding. Recommend expand to secondary grades. Controlled trauma works better under 10. That night, Hannah sat in her car with the recorder in her lap, parked in the elementary school lot, watching the crew cordon off the site with fresh tarps and lights. She hit record. Episode 8. The foundation wasn't stable. We thought room 3B was the secret, but beneath that room was another. A bunker, a laboratory, a chamber of control. Etched into the walls are names, children who were taken, broken, trained. And in a plastic bag, we found the plans. They called it Project Room 01, PR01. It wasn't just abuse, it was a program. One our school system signed off on, one that may have reached farther than this town. April 3rd, 2024. Location, undisclosed hotel room, outside Columbus, Ohio. She didn't give her real name. When Hannah answered the blocked number and heard the voice, shaky but clear, she instinctively pressed record. The woman introduced herself only as Wren. I was in room 3B, 1993. I remember the lower room, but I didn't die there. I got out. Hannah froze. What's your real name? Silence, then softly. That's not the important part. She agreed to meet. 2 hours later, they sat across from each other in a quiet hotel room with drawn curtains and a towel shoved under the door. Wren was in her late 30s, pale with pale hair, lips chapped, a tremor in her hands that never quite stopped. She lit a cigarette with shaking fingers and asked Hannah not to judge. Take your time, Hannah said. Start wherever you need. It started with lunch duty, Wren began. I was always kept after. The counselor said I had a hard time listening. She'd take me out of class and walk me behind the portable. 3B. There was this hatch under the building like an old crawl space. She had a key. Wren closed her eyes. There was a mattress, a tape player. Sometimes she made me listen to the same story over and over again. Sometimes she'd ask me to repeat things, word for word. If I didn't get it right, she'd make me start again. How long did this go on? I don't know. Weeks, maybe months. I started forgetting what day it was. Once, I slept down there overnight. When I woke up, the door was locked. No light, just air through a vent. Who else was there? There was a boy, she said. Ryan. Hannah's breath caught. He was quiet. He'd already learned the rules. I think he tried to help me. Told me when to stay still, when not to cry. Tears welled in her eyes. He wasn't scared for himself. He was scared for me. What happened to him? Hannah asked. Wren lit another cigarette. Inhaled deep. They took him one day. I don't know where. I heard a struggle. I heard crying. Then, nothing. After that, she came back. Ms. Brooks. Told me I was good. Said I had potential. What happened next? Wren looked at the ceiling. She said they didn't need me anymore. Wren said she escaped during a fire drill. Slipped out through the side gate, barefoot, bleeding from the knees. Ran 5 blocks. A woman in a maroon station wagon picked her up. She dropped me at the ER and never gave her name, Wren said. Police came. I lied. Said I ran away from home. I never talked about school. I was too scared. Why now? Hannah asked. Wren took out a crumpled printout of the podcast's episode list. Her finger tapped Episode 8. The foundation wasn't stable. You said it. The names on the wall, Lucas, Victoria, Tanya, Lauren. They were real. I remember Tanya. She carved her name into the bed frame. She looked up, eyes red. They wanted someone compliant. They were testing how fast they could break you. I lasted longer than they thought. But Ryan didn't fight. He just took it. That's why they chose him. Chose him for what? To be the first they didn't bring back. Back in her car, Hannah sat with the weight of Wren's testimony thick on her chest. She opened the recorder. Episode 9. The Survivor. Her name isn't Wren, but her story is real. She remembers the pink walls, the mattress, the whispering through the vent. She remembers Ryan, not as a case file, not as a headline, but as a boy who protected her, who gave up his chance to escape so she could live. She remembers the voice of Ms. Brooks telling her she was next. But Wren didn't stay quiet. She ran. And now, 30 years later, she's helping us finish what he started. April 4th, 2024. Location: Tilden Creek Elementary excavation site, sublevel C. The ground cracked on the 4th day of expanded excavation. Beneath the second chamber, beneath the walls etched with names in the desk and the cot, there was still something else. A void sealed beneath 2 concrete slabs, laced with rusted rebar, which the forensic team said had no structural justification. It wasn't meant to support weight. It was meant to bury something. By evening, they broke through. Inside the cavity was a trunk, old, wooden, charred at the edges. Metal latches sealed with corroded screws. No markings. It took 3 people and a pry bar to open it. Inside, a bundle of laminated ID tags. First names only, with classroom photos. A stack of folders, their pages stuck together by age and humidity. And resting at the bottom, wrapped in wax paper and electrical tape, a VHS cassette labeled in red pen, PR01, last session. Hannah stood beside Greer as the tape played under lab lighting. The static gave way to a view of the lower room again, but this time the angle was different, higher, shot from above, as if from a mounted camera in the corner. Ryan sat on the mattress. He wasn't speaking, wasn't blinking. His eyes were wide, almost vacant. A man's voice, flat, familiar, spoke off camera. "Let's begin. Ryan, when you hear the sound, tell me where you are." No reply. "Ryan?" Still nothing. Then the sound of a click, like a toy being wound. A music box played, softly, off tune. Ryan's eyes flickered toward it. His lips moved. "I'm at home." "Good. And who's with you?" A pause. "My mom, my brother, the dog." The voice again. "You're safe here. This is your real house. Say it." Ryan whispered, "This is my real house." The camera rolled on as the voice asked Ryan to repeat phrases. "Obey commands. Smile on cue." Hannah watched, sick to her stomach, until the last 30 seconds. That's when the camera shifted. Someone picked it up. It jostled, swung wildly, came to rest on a man's face. Anthony DeMarco, the principal, gray blazer, wireframe glasses, smiling faintly. He looked into the camera like he knew it would be watched one day, and then he said, "Session concluded. Promising subject. Recommend expansion. Next phase, PR02. Relocation confirmed. Assets in place." He reached toward the camera, and the tape cut. Back in the room, Hannah couldn't breathe. Greer looked like he'd seen a ghost. "That confirms it. He wasn't just covering it up," she said. "He was running it." "And he disappeared in 2004, Greer added. "No tax records, no death certificate, no confirmed address." Because he knew this day would come. The ID tags were processed. 37 names total, 17 confirmed deceased, 11 unknown, 9 living, found, contacted, or still pending. Everyone had been a child in Tilden Creek between 1989 and 1995. Hannah read each name aloud for the next podcast episode, one by one, as if returning something sacred. Episode 10, What Was Underneath. In the final chamber, we found a trunk. In it, identities stripped away and stored. Children taught to forget their own names. We found a tape. The last session. The final piece of a puzzle too horrific to ignore. And on it, we saw his face. Principal Anthony DeMarco. Smiling, knowing, recording. He didn't just authorize the lower room. He built it. And somewhere out there, if he's still alive, he knows we've opened the door again. April 12th, 2024. Location, Tilden Creek, Ohio. The school has been fenced off. Chains on the front gates, police tape fluttering in the April wind. Bulldozers line the far edge of the lot, their engines silent for now, awaiting final clearance from the county. No one would be allowed near room 3B again. Not without a court order. Not without masks. Not without the understanding that something had once lived beneath this school that had nothing to do with education, and everything to do with control. Hannah stood in the grass behind the building, just past the old bike racks. Her recorder hung from her neck. This time she didn't turn it on. She didn't need to. The whole world had heard the story now. After the last episode aired, the podcast had gone viral. National news, Senate hearings pending, class action suits mounting, state officials claiming ignorance, retired school board members claiming amnesia, former teachers coming forward in tears. 3 more survivors had contacted her. One remembered the quiet chair. Another described the smiling man with the clipboard. A third, now a 40-year-old man in Boston, said he could still hum the song from the music box in his dreams. The case was no longer about Ryan James. It was about all of them. They never found DeMarco. Interpol confirmed he'd used false documents to travel to Europe in the early 2000s. He was last spotted in Prague in 2009, using the name Andrew March. No banking activity since 2011. He may be dead, or he may be waiting, watching, planning R02. The state dismantled room 3B on April 10th. The lower room was collapsed inward, filled with earth and sealed with concrete. But before the last concrete pour, Hannah returned one final time. She left something behind. A pair of red sneakers, size 2Y, the Velcro straps worn soft. She placed them in the exact corner where the staircase had once ended, facing the direction of the east wall. And she whispered the boy's name. Ryan. The final frame of her podcast video shows the shoes resting alone in the gravel pit. A title fades in memory of the children who weren't supposed to come back, and those who did.